Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Before we get into this episode, I think we have to open by acknowledging the passing of Alex Delvecchio yesterday on July 1st. Incredible loss for the Red Wings and the hockey community. Alex was a legend of not just the Detroit Red Wings, but the entire sport of hockey, the NHL, one of the true all-time greats. I mean, we know we see number 10 hanging from the rafters, but after Sid Abel was traded, he took over on the production line between Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay on the production line too, and being captain for a dozen seasons. So many of the records of old were ones that he held. I think when he retired, at the time of his retirement, he was second all time in the NHL in number of games played, assists, points, 3-time Cup winner, 3-time Lady Byng winner. Is one of 3 players in league history with 1,500 career games, all with one team. Yzerman and Lidstrom being the other 2, all with the Red Wings. Just also served as head coach and GM. I know, Evan, we joke on the show a lot about how you always bring up that Alex Delvecchio is one of the more underrated and underappreciated greats of the game, especially in Red Wings history. But there's not really words to properly describe the impact he had on this organization.
He only missed 14 games in the last 16 years of his career.
They genuinely don't make them like that anymore. Especially
in an era where it was just a fight club out there, just a real tough game. Some of his stat lines and some of the records he held or has held is just incredible. When Catherine and I were on our way to Italy to get married, I had our Wing Wheel podcast hat on in the airport in Milan, and we're sitting there grabbing our luggage, and a lady beside me says, "Oh, are you a Red Wings fan?" I was like, "Yeah, you could say that, I guess." And I was like, "Are you from Michigan? Are you a Wings fan?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "You might know my dad. My dad's Alex Delvecchio." I was like, just so bizarre, but we just chit-chatted a little bit, asked how he was, and just said it was great to meet you and that. So just a great family, and just a really great guy, a great family all around.
Our condolences and our thoughts are with the family and loved ones of Alex Delvecchio. I have a new tinfoil hat, but not even really a joke theory on what the Red Wings should do. Just tamper. Just cheat. Just tamper. There's no one out there, as predicted by Steve Yzerman. Brad, you talked about it. There's no one out there. You need some guys. Just go tamper. Talk to Robertson's agent or his family or his barber or whoever and say, "Hey, there's $12 million a year for you in Detroit. Demand a trade." Vegas got Mitch Marner, and that was a years-long campaign, and Marner's talking about them "Oh yeah, my wife and I were talking to players and seeing how it was." He was getting the full court press 12 months ago. Just go tamper.
So just to be clear, players can't ask each other what it's like playing for said team?
That's exactly right. Agents can't ask Steve Yzerman what, a player of this, player profile that matches perfectly what Jason Robertson would get if he came to Detroit. That's a good thinking, Evan. I agree with you. There is no such thing as tampering. Go tamper.
Fair enough.
All right. Free agency hasn't wrapped up, but as of now, I think we're just waiting on Nikolai Ehlers, and that's the last big name of free agency. So the free agency recap episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is here. It's going to sound familiar in a lot of ways, but it's going to be different in a lot of ways. I don't know. It's a complicated position Detroit's in right now, and I'm kind of glad for the timing of this episode because it felt like the right time, and this is hours after the Mason Appleton deal came in, to just kind of assess where this Red Wings roster is at, what Steve Yzerman has to work with ahead of him, and assess the moves that he made. Because, the Red Wings fan base is a little angsty right now, but at the same time, things are They're nuanced. We'll put it that way. Anyhow, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to bring you all that and more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to be, like I said, recapping the entire free agency to date so far for the Red Wings, talking about where the roster sits, assessing and grading YZERMAN'S moves, his non-moves, what the cap space that he has to work with is moving forward and what that could be used for, and where he's going to have to search to fill in the holes that still exist. We're going to be talking overall team dynamics in terms of what they can look forward to for the rest of the season. Is the roster different enough to make a meaningful difference over last year? All of that and more. We are going to get into the rest of the league, the moves that were made in terms of signings, trades, how they relate to the Red Wings, and also just the notable ones across the NHL, who is still out there, and some other league notes before we jump into overtime. Before all that, very quickly, this show is primarily brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. You get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes. They record right after these main ones. We let loose. We have fun. You get bloopers. You get thoughts with Evan. It's a good time. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. It's a fantastic community that is always a buzz with discussion on, hockey, the Red Wings, but things completely unrelated like golf, Formula One. There's a pets channel. It's a blast to be in there. You're also automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game in season directly to our Patreon supporters, and we have plenty planned for the offseason as well. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Brad, you said a lot over the last few episodes that if there were no big names out there still, that you would rather have the Red Wings sit out any big contracts and just stand pat rather than, overspend on a middling player for long-term big money. That's how it played out for Detroit. Like, you can be frustrated with where the Red Wings are at, before, during, and after free agency started. But this was sparse. A free agency that had a ton of names headlining for the 12 months leading up, but pretty much everyone was immediately off the board.
Yeah, and we talked about the struggles the Red Wings would have luring the big free agents. Turned out it was a more difficult task than we even anticipated because most of them didn't even hit the market. All the names we ran through that the Red Wings could even have a reasonable chance at were gone. Nikolai Ehlers is still out there, but according to the insiders, he's narrowed it down to a few teams. Detroit doesn't seem to be on that short list of teams he'd be interested in. Gavrikov sounds like he was zeroed in on the Rangers for the last 2 months because tampering's not real.
Took a discount.
He took a discount. That was actually probably of all the defense contracts signed, the most reasonable one.
Yeah.
You look at what Provorov signed for, you look at what Hag signed for, Faravari, Ceci, Dumoulin.
DeAndre Miller is making more than him.
And none of the Florida contracts count as reasonable because there's a million unfair advantages there. But yeah, Gavrikov ended up probably being the best deal. But again, he was zeroed in on the Rangers. So then my fear was exactly what we saw. Look at some of those secondary contracts to all the defensemen I just laid out. And Tanner Jeannot, and that is what I wanted the Red Wings to avoid. And they did. Very successfully. Are they a better team right now than they were last year? Marginally. I think JVR, Appleton, and Jacob Bernard-Docker are upgrades on who they're replacing.
Gibson as well.
John Gibson's obviously a big one. Talked about that last episode. So yeah, they're better. Better 5 points to make the playoffs? Possibly. I think the cutoff for the playoffs is going to be higher than that this year, so they got a bigger hill than that to climb. But I think it's within the realm of possibility. Because I did see a lot of people talking about all they did was shuffle deck chairs on the Titanic. And, I understand the sentiment, but we did talk about one of the things that needed to be done was rework the bottom 6. I don't know how many people like Appleton and JVR, but that's a 30-year bottom 6. Didn't solve first line left wing yet. Might not be an option to do it for all the reasons we just laid out. Top 4 is looking exactly the same as last year. But again, Bernard Docker's better than anybody else they were going to put on the bottom pair. So the biggest point that I feel needs to be made, because everybody's looking at the opening night roster. Everything I was laying out the last few weeks about either get a superstar or do nothing. And like what they did, to me, this basically counts as nothing. Just kind of working around the fringes, is it didn't hurt them long term. I don't care about the opening night roster when it comes to decisions that were made in the last few days. Because imagine if you had a Cody Ceci or a Tanner Jeannot contract on there right now, hurting your long-term flexibility. Because if the Red Wings make the playoffs this year, maybe they are more attractive to free agents the next couple of years. So you need the cap space. We were talking about it before we went on air. Do you really believe Steve Yzerman is going to go into the season with $10 million cap space? Because they got a full roster now. They don't need to add anybody, and they can ice the team opening day. Yeah, I could see it. Don't spend it if you don't need it. Now, mind you, JVR and Kane's bonuses could eat up a good chunk of that. But unless Nikolai Ehlers tells you tonight, I'm coming to the Detroit Red Wings, where are you putting that money? There's nobody left on the market worth giving that to, unless an unexpected trade comes out of nowhere.
Let's get into what the Red Wings moves actually are. So we'll go move by move, analyze them, and then get back into the broader discussion. I'm itching to make a joke about, Ken Holland just doing the exact same thing in 3 different locations now.
Oh my God.
But I feel it is worth saving just out of respect, because the Red Wings didn't sign Cody Ceci to that contract. And even we talked about, Ryan Lindgren being a Red Wing through and through in terms of if you had to label a guy, and the Red Wings didn't sign him to that contract either. So talk about bullets dodged. All right, let's get into it. First, the Red Wings start to take care of their own business, their own RFAs or UFAs. Albert Johansson returns on a 2-year, $1.125 million contract, AAV. So Johansson still expires an RFA, was an RFA now, and gets himself 2 years of security, a little payday. The Red Wings lock up a guy at a very minimal cap hit who, whether you think he should have or not, played a bulk of last season in their top 4 as a defenseman. They don't tie themselves too long to the term. I think this is appropriate, and you probably weren't going to see Johansson sign too much longer than this, because this allows him to also bet on himself, because he's probably saying, all right, well, if I'm not getting the big offer now, if I'm still playing top 4 minutes for the next 2 years, then I'll get my raise. So all in all, this is a fair deal in my mind for both team and player that allows both of them flexibility.
I'm sure this was the Red Wings' preference, so they might not have given him a choice. I'm surprised he didn't go 1 year. Get to that payday a little quicker. Because again, if he plays in the Red Wings' top 4 for most of this year and does call it exactly the same as last year, although you got to expect there's reason for improvement, he'd be getting a lot more than 1.1. Like number 4 defenseman in the NHL. We just saw it. They're getting $4 million. And I'm not saying 2 years into his career he's going to get that, but they're getting that on the open market. So he would have got a pretty substantial raise, I think, with 1 more season under his belt. So if he does have another good year, the Red Wings getting him for another year at 1.125 is probably a win for the team.
Yeah, and not a highly productive defenseman in terms of points, and that's what drives the price up for a lot of free agents. So I see what you're saying, but at the same time, it's like the extra year of security, it doesn't hurt. It probably got him an extra little bit of change as well. So,
I mean, we're talking about a sub $2 million defenseman. Like that's league minimum, essentially, in a couple of years for a guy who lugged as many minutes, more minutes than we probably thought he would, and held his own to varying degrees. Can't be upset about this contract at all.
Jonatan Berggren stays with the Red Wings, 1 year, $1.825 million. And that one was a titch higher than what I was expecting, but also the Red Wings saying, we shipped out Tarasenko, which we'll talk about in a second here, but we shipped out Tarasenko. We need the depth scoring, and here's your opportunity to show that you can lock down a spot in the lineup. I think Berggren is essentially back to the position he was in at the start of last season, which is you don't have the long-term security. Nice little pay raise for him, nothing too crazy, but enough to warrant him coming back and to reward some of the production, but he still has to prove himself this season to lock it down long term.
If you look at the top 12 forwards as they're signed now, if Danielson or Mazur have a really strong camp and force their way onto the team, he's probably the guy coming out of the lineup.
If he doesn't, not that he was bad, but if he's not substantially better, then yeah, he's very likely one of the first candidates. Not the only candidate, but I'd say one of the first candidates. But, I mean, Berggren did at points make the kinds of steps that the Red Wings wanted to see from him last season, so it stands to reason that they expect he could do a bit more. It wasn't a long-term bet, though, so that I think that deal is more or less appropriate for what they were expecting. I mentioned Tarasenko, so let's just talk about that one. Tarasenko traded away to Minnesota. His full $4.75 million cap hit remaining on the last season of his contract. He signed a 2-year deal before last season started. So 1 year left at 4.75. Minnesota takes the full thing for nothing. The Red Wings don't retain. They don't sweeten it. Not even a 5th round pick added in exchange for future considerations, which again is nothing. Future considerations means it's 0 in return. So I don't really get this from Bill Guerin's perspective, but I think with the big qualifier that Yzerman's the one who signed this contract, this is tidy work by Yzerman to dump the contract at absolutely no cost. He gets out from that one, gives himself the breathing room on $4.75 million, which is a good chunk, and the Red Wings do away with what was just a bad fit from start to finish in Tarasenko.
Yeah, obviously you can't give Yzerman full credit because he's the one who signed the contract, but to get out from it with no sweetener, no buyout, and no money retained, that feels like a gigantic win.
Yeah.
Like it feels like a massive win. Maybe Kaprizov said something over in Minnesota to get one of his buddies over there. I don't know. I don't understand this for Minnesota at all. You finally get Suter and Parise off the books, and this is how you spend a good chunk of it. Hey, I'm not complaining. Great deal for the Red Wings.
Curious if Minnesota just thinks it was a fit issue in Detroit and that there is still something left in Tarasenko's game. I mean, we had to watch a painful 82 iterations of that last year, so my vote is no, but maybe they think there is. But like you guys said, the fact that the Red Wings were able to dump this without having to add anything or retain, big golf clap for Steve Yzerman.
And like we pick on the mistakes a lot. It goes without saying, but it should be stated again here. There's no perfect GM in the league, but the best ones do get out from mistakes and find ways out from mistakes and don't hang on to them as like a sunk cost fallacy. So, I mean, there is a lot of credit due here for seeing the Tarasenko thing. And Yzerman worked for a long time to dump Tarasenko. The fact that he ended up doing so with attaching nothing, no retention or anything, yeah, that's a big win. Down to the wire again, Patrick Kane. You know how I always said it's right when I walked into the cottage, the Patrick Kane thing happened?
Well, he was probably on one of the boats going by and he saw you.
I was actually driving home early. So the night before free agency started, I thought, you know what? Traffic the next morning is going to be a nightmare. There's a ton of rain that just cleared up. So the roads are probably clear. I'm going to get here now, get on the road at night. I don't mind a night drive. 30 minutes in, I had to pull over because the Kane contract came in. I'm like, yeah, that's my own doing.
Some people would say thank you.
And I say thank you because I'm quite happy with the Patrick Kane contract.
There's parts of me that feels bad for you, but then there's parts of me that understands you go to the cottage between the draft and free agency every year and you do it to yourself.
You know what?
Of all the other weekends in the summer.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had to go to Lake Muskoka for the long weekend.
It's not to be clear, it is, I am very fortunate to have a friend who has the cottage. I am not I am far from a cottage owner, I'll tell you that much. That's my whole thing about the weekend where all this happens, the draft into free agency. Yeah, there's some personal gain here, which is we can all go away for either, whether you're doing 4th of July or Canada Day or whatever, or just enjoying the summer weekends. The players and the agents and the GMs are all driving in the same direction as me, going to the exact same lakes in the same cottages. Like we all want this to be over sooner.
Wasn't there a story with the Gibson trade where it was delayed getting announced because nobody could find Mrazek or something like that?
Yeah, I think Freed mentioned that. He might have like dropped his phone in the water or something.
Didn't they say John Gibson, he was saying he couldn't get in contact with Steve Yzerman because he was in Cabo?
Oh, yeah, he's doing a charity event in Cabo. Yeah, me too, man.
The same.
It's tough. Anyhow, the Patrick Kane contract came through again, not 11th hour, but pretty much the 11th hour. And before we get into the details, there was a lot of noise, as there always is when it involves the Rangers. But there's noise out there. I don't know how reliable it was at the start or where it came from, I should say, but saying that if it wasn't Detroit, it was going to be the Rangers, and Kane was deciding. And this is on the heels of all the Toronto stuff that was happening earlier in the summer. I looked into both things, and I don't think there's much legs to either one. I think Kane and Yzerman, what they were both saying, that's what the truth is, that it was always going to be Detroit. It was just about working out the details. I don't think the Rangers were ever in play here. I never got that indication from those who would know about the Rangers either. Like, I think this was Detroit's start to end. So, $3 million AAV contract at a base level, but because he is a 35-plus contract, he's eligible for bonuses. And he has a bonus structure that could take him as high as $7 million, although not likely to reach all of those. $2.5 million comes in extra for 10 games played, another $250,000 for 30 games played, and again for 50 games played. So that's $3 million right there on top of the original $3 million if he plays 50 games. Another $500,000 if the Red Wings reach the playoffs. So we're at $6.5 million. $250,000 for a round 1 win and $250,000 for a round 2 win. So that is a total.
That's a $6 million contract from what I'm hearing.
Yeah. If we get to $7 million, we're not complaining about that cap hit. We're thrilled that the Red Wings made the conference finals. Another thing about bonuses is that you can either absorb them in the same year that the player's playing. So if at the end of the season, the Red Wings have the accumulated cap space, they can eat those bonuses. Or if they can't, absorb it then, it can be pushed to next season. And remember, the cap is going up again next season, up from the current $95.5 million. So that is, the player still gets their money for the bonuses, but the team has some flexibility that way. So overall thoughts on Kane returning, where he's going to be in the lineup, and the value of that contract.
I love that he's returning. I got to imagine that second line that he was playing with DeBrincat and Kasper doesn't get broken up. The age-old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Again, like we joked about, if that thing's a penny more than $6 million, it means something went very, very right. If any of this bonus has to be paid out next season, probably means something else went very, very right in terms of a Robertson or an Ehlers or another big contract eating up a big chunk of whatever $10-ish million is left. Yeah, and I don't see a downside here. Low risk. Like, all the circumstances around it make this no contract's a true no risk contract, but really damn close to it.
What are you going to do if you're the Red Wings, right? Like, you need Patrick Kane on your team. If you're not going to go out and get a Granlund or an Ehlers, like, you can't afford to have the Rangers or Toronto creeping around looking to sign Patrick Kane. You have to get it locked up. And the fact that the Red Wings keep the base salary low and then have flexibility on the remaining amount of that cap, I think it's a win-win for everybody. Patrick Kane gets a nice ticket. Red Wings get to keep a guy who's a bolt-on player in their top 6. And the Red Wings can move the money around if they need. So it had to get done. And I think this is maybe one of the least painful ways the Red Wings could have done it.
Yeah, and I think you both put it perfectly. The Red Wings need Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane could have left. And whether you think that's a good spot for the Red Wings to be in or not, the Red Wings need Patrick Kane. Because what if the
Red Wings have no leverage in this situation?
Absolutely not. And so the fact that we got the contract terms that the Red Wings did, and they guarantee, like, the bonuses are tied to Patrick Kane playing, like, yeah, you have a top 6 guy who's that integral to your offensive output and especially your power play. And for a team that suffers scoring, you need your power play to stay as good as it was last year. Kane is a huge part of that. $3 million base salary, and then you reward him for another $3 million or however much for just playing the appropriate amount of games that you hope to get from a top 6 player. That's a win. it's a win-win, but the Red Wings really benefit from this because, I mean, we're going to jump ahead here in a little bit and talk about how the Red Wings are still lacking a top 6 forward. Imagine they needed 2. That would be it. Like, it may be horrifying to say, but you can't afford to have lost Patrick Kane. So the good news is we didn't have to stress about this because both Kane and Yzerman were telegraphing this. But yeah, it's a good return, and the money is right, the AAV and the bonuses and the term is right. It's about as happy as you can be. So happy to see Showtime continue in Hockeytown. Moving forward is where it got a little less exciting. There was a depth signing of Ian Mitchell previously with the Boston Bruins, and Providence is going to be a organizational depth right shot defenseman, 1-year league min contract, Grand Rapids guy by all rights, barring injury or call up or whatever. So that I think people were starting to hope for the fireworks. Didn't quite come there.
I think this contract was funny because, by and large, not just in the Red Wings world, free agency started off exceptionally slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody kind of had that, come on, guys, do something, anything. Please. And then the first signing that comes down from Detroit's an AHL guy, and everybody's like, oh no, we're cooked.
And it's like these contracts happen every year. Every team does them. It's something that you do, but it's like, oh wow, there's really going to be a string of 500 arguing messages about a poor Ian Mitchell contract. The next one, though, I thought was like, this was a handy little move. Jacob Bernard-Docker, who you'll remember from the Norris Cousins trade, was not qualified by Buffalo, which I thought was weird at the time. And I was like, he could be a sneaky good ad. Right shot defenseman, has had questions about whether he's lived up to his draft pedigree or what they're hoping to be. But I see Bernard-Docker as, and it's a 1-year, $875,000 contract, sub $1 million. You can bury the whole thing if the guy doesn't work out for you. But he's a guy who I think could be, at a minimum, hopefully, you don't notice him in your depth on the right side, block shots, is just a steady Eddie down there. And who knows, maybe he hits a little bit more of his upside in Detroit. I like this move a lot. Is it a massive needle moving? You're writing home to mom and dad about this? Maybe not, but this is the kind of good depth move that I like to see Detroit take a bet on. Cheap flyer, absolutely worth it.
As it stands now, he's probably on the third pair with Eric Gustafsson. That was a statement that...
Would you rather play on Buffalo or that be your defensive partner? I guess that's the question.
Well, it was funny because Buffalo fans, this is my first indication that we should at least like the signing a little bit. Buffalo fans were pissed.
Oh, yeah. They're furious he wasn't qualified, and then they're furious for how little he went for.
His qualifying offer was $866, and he signs for $875.
Yeah.
Like, well, either way, masterful GMing over there in Buffalo. So as it stands right now, he's Detroit's number 5 defenseman. Again, like you said, he's not a needle mover. He's not anything special. He's not going to put up a ton of points. But he's an upgrade over everybody who played on the Red Wings bottom pair last year. Not substantially, like you're not going from a Chevy Cavalier to a Porsche, but he's going to be, in all likelihood, things happen, trademark, fine. Like he's going to be someone you throw out on the ice in the third pair, and it doesn't feel like you're on a roller coaster the entire shift. And it's been a long time since we've had a third pair in Detroit that can do that. Now, they've only solved half that problem, but he's a good start.
I hate myself so much. When Brad said a Cavalier to a Porsche, I'm like, maybe they're going from Dockers to Levi's. I hate myself so much. I'm just sitting over here trying not to laugh.
Levi's still in Buffalo. They kept.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. But yeah, you got
everyone can tune out.
Oh God,
we're done here. Great show, everybody.
Are we hungover from the draft weekend?
Yes,
or what?
Yes. Is it the off season yet? Please God. But I like this move a lot. Like, what's he, 25, 26? He's still young. Like, this is better than some of the other guys the Red Wings have brought in when they're 30 plus years old. You know exactly who they are.
Just turned 25.
Exactly. So the fact that he's coming out of Buffalo leads me to believe that we've got a Stanley Cup run in our near future. And I'm seriously considering Norris votes at this point in time. But this is the type of guys Red Wings should be taking swings on, and it costs you nothing to get him, and it costs you nothing to sign him. So why not?
With Jeff Petrie leaving to Florida, congratulations on your future Stanley Cup, Jeff Petrie. And I do wish him the best of luck, but I actually would have preferred to keep Jeff Petrie over Justin Hall, but the Red Wings still have Justin Hall. They didn't buy him out. That opportunity's gone. A second buyout window he won't qualify for because he doesn't make enough money. So he is still in the organization, barring a trade. And so I was like, I want someone to be able to reliably, provided everything else goes well, which, as Brad said, is still not completely done, push Justin Hall out of the lineup to be like a number 7 guy or a Griffins player.
Well, people talked about Albert doing it last year. They're like, if he can't be better than Jeff Petrie or Justin Hall, like, why would he be in the lineup? And he did that.
Yep.
So I would expect this is the same scenario.
And this gives flexibility too, which I like. And I think is sneaky important for the Red Wings this year, because as it stands right now, if Docker is truly just a number 5-6 defenseman, the Red Wings can't change their top 4 from last year. They don't have another option. Hall can't do it. Gustafsson can't do it. Full stop. And if JBD can't be the guy to do it, okay. That's it. That's your top 4 for the year. Pray to God nobody gets hurt. But because he's only 25 and he shoots right, which is huge, if he's good, genuinely good, and again, there's a difference between good, great, and elite. If he's good, and you can bump him up with Edvinsson, and then you can bring Johansson down to the bottom pair, now all of a sudden, maybe, just maybe, you can trot out 3 good defensive pairings.
It doesn't have to be everyone is elite for their position, but if you can get someone passable at each slot, then yeah, because you would love to have Johansson as a 3rd pair guy. And we're talking upside here. Like, Brad, you're right to say, like, pie in the sky, maybe. But yeah, as a baseline 3rd pair and anything above that, it's a cherry on top, and it could only serve to bolster the defense. In the worst case scenario, it's like you never had him at all because you just bury him.
And again, flexibility. If a trade or another free agent, although I don't see any free agents out there who would fit this bill, so likely trade, materializes where you do get a top 4 defenseman, all of a sudden your bottom pair could be Johansson and JBD. That could be downright good for a bottom pair. Which again, when has it been? Like, if the Red Wings want to get, say, a specialist, pair him with a defensive defenseman. Say Erik Karlsson's available, and you throw him with Edvinsson. Now all of a sudden you got a good second pairing, you got a defensive anchor with a generational right winger. Like,
I can't believe you're letting him have this conversation.
He put it on Twitter today.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
As a meme. Yeah. But I also said it with my words. And so I have to eat this. I knew what I was doing today.
Yeah.
We'll save that.
But
We'll save that for the cap space conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say when we get to the cap space. But again, Bernard Docker being a righty, reasonably young. Now, we should mention he's 25. The expectations for dramatic improvement at this point in his career are not there. We're talking 5 to 10% improvement on what he is now would be monumental.
That's on a normal team. He's coming from Buffalo.
Terrific point.
Yes.
But it provides hopefully stability, but at the very least flexibility.
So the Red Wings added JBD. The initialism gang continues to grow. JVR, who the Red Wings were tied to in the past. Those deals didn't materialize in past off seasons. This time it works out. James Van Riemsdyk, number 2 overall pick from 2007, next to Patrick Kane at number 1 overall. So both those top 2 picks are now Detroit Red Wings. But JVR comes to Hockeytown, 1 year, $1 million contract. Bonus structure, I believe an extra $750,000 potentially reachable in terms of bonus incentives. So at most $1.75 million. JVR had 16 goals, 20 assists last season. Big body, is not the JVR of old, but that's essentially they shipped out Tarasenko's $4.75 million and replaced him with JVR at $1 million, maybe a titch more, and are hoping that he can bring actual depth production. Is this a solution for the top 6 forward? No. Are they going to try him there at some point? Probably. Is that an ideal solution? No. Am I happy that JVR is in this lineup based on the depth production kind of element that the Red Wings are looking for? Absolutely. I think this is another shrewd move.
Yeah, I love this move. I don't expect him to do much more, if any more, than Tarasenko did last year. There's one gigantic difference. He's going to be doing it for $3.75 million less. That matters because, again, the Red Wings might not use the cap space, but flexibility is always king. He put up 16 goals last year. He's not a burner, never has been, good around the net front. Like, best case scenario, this guy is third line left wing, power play 2 net front. And he does those things adequately. Worst case scenario, he's a $1 million fourth liner.
He's like the best version of Michael Rasmussen.
I don't know if he can skate like Ras, and I say that not even in a funny way.
I don't know that you can make that comparison with respect to JVR, honestly, in terms of like his proficiency. But like, I get what you're saying. And he is a big body too, and still uses his size. I feel at least a little bit there. So I think it's a good ad. And I know the whole trope about veteran leadership, but JVR is like, has a reputation for being a really well-liked guy as well. Another player where if you look at the teams he's left, the fan base is generally pretty disappointed that he wasn't retained.
Yeah, and again, we're getting into the next signing a little bit here too. You can kind of see the formula the Red Wings are going for here, and call it the third line, because if you get a big body who can skate like Appleton, and he's really proficient at getting pucks to the net, garbage at converting them, and not great at getting high danger chances for himself. Well, it's a guy who's good at getting the puck to the net. And JVR's biggest skill his whole career is when he gets to the net, he finds ways to get the puck in the net, whether that's tips, rebounds, quick hands in tight. Like, that's his thing. That's what he's good at. And you throw an Andrew Kopp in between them, that could be a pretty effective pain in the ass type third line to play against. Not an above league average third line, but passable, better than they've had. Again, I don't know who's going up to play on the first line, but if that's your third line, I can see some logic there, and I can see a scenario where JVR puts up 15, 20 goals on that line.
You mentioned the next signing. We'll talk about Elmer Soderblom and mention John Leonard in a minute, but Mason Appleton is the one that came in today. That is a 2-year, $2.9 million AAV contract. Mason Appleton previously with the Winnipeg Jets. And like, this is just the kind of, you know how we've been talking about how Detroit Red Wings depth has been really underwhelming for like the meeting the minimum sufficient standard of play that they've been asked to do in terms of any kind of depth production, any kind of, proficiency on the penalty kill. We've said cycle out anyone who's replaceable on the bottom 6. Mason Appleton fits that bill. It's a cheap contract. The term is 2 years. $2.9 million is honestly, like, if you have to mark it, I think a little bit higher than what you would expect, but not by a lot. Like, this is a pretty standard fair contract. Again, the reaction to this contract was pretty strong, and I understand that in terms of like expectations of what fans are looking for, but this is a depth lineup signing. Appleton comes from the Jets, and yeah, my read on him is that like has the puck on his stick or is in offensive situations a lot, but I do find that offensive plays kind of peter out or sputter out on his stick quite a bit, and I think you've seen that frustration from Jets fans as well. Like, a lot of chances kind of die with Mason Appleton, but he's also, his motor's extremely high, skates well, is a bigger body than what the Red Wings have had, and plays hard, and was deployed with Lowry and Niederreiter for a lot of the time. That was fairly pointed out to me, but deployed in pretty important defensive roles against top lines from the other team. I know that advanced analytics disagree, but if having watched a good bit of him, I do think his calling card here is more of the defensive responsibility, and any offense is a bonus. You have to kind of hope something clicks in Detroit. It didn't really in Winnipeg. Could be a 25 point guy. Maybe it was just a down year last year. Maybe he's a 40-point guy, but this is a depth forward signing.
He's a more effective version of Michael Rasmussen. He's good in his D zone. He's big. I find even though he's smaller than Rasmussen, he uses his frame more effectively. He's got the wheels and the ability to transport a puck. He can, get in, muck and grind on a cycle in an effective way. But yeah, like I already touched on, and you touched on, he has no finish, like 0 touch around the net. Not that he's never going to score any goals, but I saw all the Darren Helm jokes floating around today, and honestly, not the worst comparison I've heard, but you have to use him effectively. I think all the eye rolling and anger from the fans on this signing when it came out was, yeah, it's probably a little rich for what he brings, but it's just that it was so predictable. Like I've made the joke for weeks now that it was going to be Lindgren and Appleton because those are the Red Wings guys, and here we are, the bottom 6 forward who can't score. Does he feel redundant? You betcha he feels redundant. But it is only 2 years. It subs $3 million. I am okay with this for the sole fact that they also got JVR. They brought it. We were begging, damn near begging last episode at our preview, please bring in some bottom 6 scoring. This isn't it. But if you put him opposite someone who can actually score like a JVR, you see the logic here. I don't love the signing. I like the player. I think he'll be fine. It is what it is. Best case scenario, he's going to do the same things everybody else has been doing in the Red Wings bottom 6, but he's just going to do it more effectively.
I think that's where I disagree. I think best case scenario is that he does more than the Red Wings bottom 6 has been doing, especially last season. Like maybe he doesn't fit into the PK and elevate the PK, and maybe he still stays at like 10 goals, 12 assists. But if that's his floor and he's coming from a winning situation, a President's Trophy winning situation in Winnipeg, like who's to say how that translates? I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm lukewarm on this contract, the same as you. The happiest part I have for this contract is, like, I mean, if you told me pre-July 1 that the Red Wings wouldn't sign Lindgren, they wouldn't sign CC, and they would sign Mason Appleton to a like 3% of the cap 2-year deal, I could not hammer that button enough times. Perfectly fine for me. But I think there's a little bit more opportunity there than standard fare for this bottom 6.
That was part of my joke with Lindgren and Appleton, is I actually thought Appleton was going to make a bit more than this. So yeah. When I saw the contract, it was like, okay, that's way more reasonable than I thought it was going to be. Again, bit rich for a 3rd, 4th liner, but well within the range.
He's a bottoms. We're trying to replace the duplicates, and this is just another attempt to find someone who can fit in and be more usable than what we saw, or be less of a ghost than what we saw in the bottom 6 last year. Like,
I thought everyone was going to say triplicate.
Honestly,
it's more than 3.
Like, how many cardio games were there? Every time, like, we were in studio watching before we recorded, we're like, that. What did this guy do out there? Whether it was, talking about Veleno or Rasmussen, or like guys who you had more hope for in any given
literally
game.
JT Compher, who led the league in cardio games.
Yeah,
statistically.
Yeah, it's like, so even if the impact isn't on the production and he just plays a faster, harder game, probably going to frustrate the hell out of you in terms of offensive opportunities, but he's also, I mean, we'll see where he's actually deployed in the lineup. I have no problem trying different bottom 6 options. You cycled out Mott and Tarasenko for JVR and Appleton.
Seems like a plus
Perfect.
play to me.
Yep.
Even if it's not going to like push you over the edge, it seems at worst an incremental improvement.
Upgrades. Always be looking to upgrade, whether it's 5% or 10%. And JVR and Appleton, again, I don't think they're a significant upgrade over Tarasenko and Mott, but it's an upgrade.
That 2065 cup run is going to be legendary.
Yeah, who are we going to have? Like, what draft year are we going to have picks 1 and 2 from? It's going to be McKenna and whoever goes 2nd overall. The other 2 contracts to mention here, John Leonard, this is another depth contract. It's a depth forward for the Red Wings. Organizational depth. Elmer Soderblom, he came in. There was a lot of panic online. The Red Wings didn't announce his qualifying offer, and so when the NHL put out their list of QOs, he wasn't on there. The reason I didn't say, oh, the Red Wings didn't qualify Elmer Soderblom was, like, 1, that doesn't make sense, and 2, this has happened in the past, so I dug into it a bit. It was eventually announced that they did make him a qualifying offer. It just wasn't announced officially. So the Red Wings retained his rights as an RFA, and so they didn't Jacob Bernard-Docker him. And then they signed him to a 2-year, $1.125 million contract, identical to Albert Johansson. Elmer Soderblom has a hell of a comeback season and earns himself a 2-year contract to stay with the Red Wings. That's like, you're just so happy for the guy to have proven everyone wrong and made the leaps in his game. And now if he can continue to stay healthy and can continually improve, even if it's just incrementally, he is the kind of bolt-on productive depth the Red Wings want.
We didn't even talk about him last offseason. Like, we barely brought up his name, and here we are happy he signed a 2-year extension. So that's a testament to the growth he's made. And as it stands now, he's got a big opportunity in front of him. And so do the Red Wings, again, having that cheap second year. Because if you're building the Red Wings forward group right now, and you're looking for the best mix, there's no great mix. Let me preface that.
We're going to get into that.
But the best mix, I think he's the guy up with Larkin and Raymond right now. So he's got a really good opportunity here to capitalize. Now, if it doesn't work, they'll probably jumble that left wing spot around a lot until someone really establishes. I imagine Soderblom will get a look there. I imagine Kopp will get a look there. Wouldn't be surprised if Berggren, if he has a good start, gets a look there. JVR, as you mentioned. But I think if you're looking for a hard to play against bottom six and some talent to go with it, of all the guys who are quote unquote bottom sixers on the Red Wings, Soderblom's got the highest upside. And whether or not he ever realizes that, who knows? But now he's got 2 years to figure it out.
He's 23, and one thing I would still love to see in his game, and he did start to embrace it a little bit, is like, start to use your size. You are massive. Look at what wins in this league. Start to use your size. It's not like he is a player who wants to not always be a finesse guy, but like he has the skill to want to do that.
You can do both.
And you can do both, and that's the modern NHL. So I think if he can embrace that even just to like a one notch more, that would be great for Elmer Soderblom.
Be a finesse guy with the puck on your stick. Be a prick when you don't have it.
So much more on the Red Wings in a moment. We're going to take our first break here on the Windwheel Podcast to hear from our sponsors. Back after this. All right, so we went over the Red Wings signings and trade, and I mean, it's July 2nd in the evening, so we'll see if anything comes through. The Red Wings were in on K'Andre Miller. We were following that one. They were one of the teams talking. I think they were a serious contender. At the end of the day, we saw that the Carolina Hurricanes offered a first, a second, and Scott Morrow for K'Andre Miller, and then signed him to an 8-year, $7.5 million AAV contract. So I don't even think it's the contract. I think that trade package would have been hard for Detroit to beat, but Detroit was trying to do more. So consider the signings they made and the trade that they made and the holes still left on the team. My read on this is of two minds. One, I like pretty much everything Yzerman did. And at the very worst, I don't hate anything he did. Maybe you're lukewarm on Appleton or whatever, but like I don't see, you brought Kane back at a great price. You brought in smart, cheap depth in JVR and JBD. Whatever you feel about Appleton, I just don't think that's a needle mover one way or the other. And I've been a big proponent. We've all been big proponents for cycling out Detroit's bottom six. But holes still remain in top six forward and top four defense.
Hole does still remain.
Justin Hall still remains. Gaps in the roster and the lineup. And I mean, part of that is who was out there. Everyone went off the board pretty much pre-free agency, and Gavrikov technically went to market, and market with air quotations because he was earmarked for the Rangers, and Yzerman didn't land the at least one of the trades we know he was working on. So I'm conflicted. They didn't do the Lindgren deal. They didn't do the Cody Ceci deal. God bless you, Ken Holland.
God, Kenny.
Was it 4 by 4.5?
He's making more than John Tavares on the same term.
Oh, that's cherry picking.
I know, but it's Cody Ceci versus John Tavares.
You let Gavrikov go, who signed for $7 million, and you brought in Dumoulin and Ceci for
8.5 combined.
Yeah, but that's two players, guys. Come on.
Like, anyways, we're not doing that dance. If you are like vehemently against repeating any of the Comfort contracts or any of the other ones, there were none of those blunders this time. But there's still gaps in the roster. So as with all things, it's nuanced. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, A+ Red Wings, what an amazing offseason. But I'm kind of saying they have work to do, acknowledging they have work to do. They have to do it, but they made small, smart moves and avoided any of the big blunders.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Of all the signings they made, the one that I'm lowest on, I'm lukewarm on, which is still tilting on the positive side of the scale. They didn't hurt long-term cap flexibility. They didn't, and here's the thing, and this is my biggest thing. Just don't sign bad players. Like that's the issue they've had in years past is they've given way too much money in term to guys who just aren't that good. And some of them have turned it around. Some of them have regressed exactly as predicted. But they're in a fine spot. And the one thing that's obviously, because this feels like it happened a month ago, doesn't get talked enough about today, at least not. Dude, that goalie market bore nothing.
Oh,
that John Gibson deal looks better and better every hour that passes.
Yeah.
Like there was Demko stayed in Vancouver, Jake Allen stayed in New Jersey.
And that Demko contract is very tenuous.
Yes. So the Red Wings, who wanted to shore up their goaltending option, got the only good deal out of it. Like Jake Allen signed at least 40. So that was a tidy piece of business. Yeah, this team might still be bad this year. Sorry, everybody. Hate to they're only marginally better than last year. I think Gibson gets you a couple standings points if he can stay healthy. And JVR and Appleton, if they are what they think they are, this bottom six is a little better. Maybe that's a couple standing points. So they're still right on the fringes of the playoffs. That's fine. If this goes bad, you get a kick at the can at Gavin McKenna. I know people don't want to hear that right now. That's franchise changing, though.
It's a brave lead to the analysis.
Yeah, but if it goes well and Gibson stays healthy and Appleton and JVR are good, it does improve the team for the better. Danielson has a chance to make this team. Kasper can take a step. Soderblom can take a step. Johansson can take a step. Edvinsson's only played one season. Could get better. Yeah, I see that hole in the top six. And if you could trot out your pairings as Chiarot, Seider, Edvinsson, somebody, Johansson, Bernard Docker, I'm feeling a lot better about that defense than I do right now. A lot better about that defense. But the short term isn't the primary objective, and there were no good long-term options on the market. They just weren't there. I'd have been okay with that K'Andre Miller contract and trade. But the thing is, I know it's one of Carolina or Dallas's first-round picks. That's significantly different value than Detroit's first-round pick.
Way different.
Pick 15 versus
spots.
pick 25 is the Grand Canyon in value. It was going to be hard for Detroit to come up with a trade package that beat that.
And Scott Morrow's no slouch.
Yeah, where they weren't robbing themselves blind. And 7.5 times 8 for Miller is a risk, but it's a good gamble. I would have done that if I was Detroit. It's on the high side and it's on the risky side. But again, Detroit's in a position where they kind of got to take a gamble like that. I'd have been okay if they did it. But if that's the only one out there where the Red Wings even had a chance at, that I'm saying, maybe, then they did the right thing. And I know everybody hates to hear that because we all wanted Marchand or Ekblad or Gavrikov or Bennett or Marner. Detroit didn't even get a seat at the table. I want to sit here and yell at Yzerman, go, be a better salesman. If they're not answering the phone, what's he going to do?
If Gavrikov's going to New York for $7 million, he was always going to New York. If Mitch Marner's talking so glowingly about how, Vegas players sold him on Vegas for the last 12 months, he was always going to Vegas. If Ehlers thinks the lights are too bright in Winnipeg, Detroit may as well be Broadway, and I mean literally like the stage on Broadway. Not trying to make excuses, because Yzerman does have to find a solution here long term, but I agree with you. In this market, it wasn't there.
Yeah, and
as of now, it's not there.
And if I had to hand pick which two bottom sixers I gave the contract to, I probably don't land on Appleton and JVR, but again, splitting hairs. We're talking about the difference of guys, maybe 5 points between them. Who cares? They're good. It's fine. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, the Yzerman can do no wrong people on the internet this week were insufferable as always, but they weren't wrong on this one. Like, this was the better alternative. Could Yzerman went out and got 2 defensemen to play on this second pair? Yeah, he could have gave Dumoulin and Ceci what the Kings gave him. And the Red Wings would have been worse off for it. Even if, here, we all love to meme Ceci and Dumoulin. They would make this defense better.
Dumoulin would.
Ceci, I even think.
That's more of an indictment on this defense than it is on...
I am well aware
That's
of
the
that.
point, yeah.
But that's the point I'm making. They would have been upgrades at the cost of long-term flexibility and, whatever you're going to need that cap space for down. Next summer, I don't have the free agent list in front of me, but maybe one of those big guys next year says yes to Detroit. Sure glad you don't have that $8.5 million on the books, right? And even Ehlers, he's not giving the Red Wings a seat at the table now. If I'm Yzerman, I'm picking up the phone every hour to just keep double checking. But
how about another $100,000? How about another $100,000?
Yeah.
Because like the Red Wings have a lot of cap space to work with. You alluded to it, Brad. They have at least, $12 million. You take some off because of Kane bonuses and JVR bonuses if you want to eat them this year. But I think even Puckpedia has, Watson on there and Mazur on there. So it'll still be, you have a good chunk of change. You can now overspend.
Yeah, exactly. They have 12 forwards. Like, whether or not you think Watson, Mazur, Danielson, I'm not even factoring him in. 12 NHL forwards, 7 NHLD, and 2 goalies. With $10 million cap. They make 0 signings the rest of the summer. They can ice an opening night roster that's definitely better than the one they did last year.
With more space.
With $10 million cap space. So if, I don't know, pick a team that thinks they're going to be good this year and things go really off the rails and all of a sudden guys become available.
Anaheim.
And all of a sudden they're like, no, we can't do this. We gotta take a step back. And Troy Terry's on the market. Again, not saying it's gonna be him. Things go really wrong in Boston, which is looking really likely at this point. And they're like, screw it, let's max out on Pasternak while we can. Not a lot of teams can take an $11.5 million. The Red Wings could.
Also, you're well positioned. I think you should be doing the Edvinsson extension ASAP because you are now in the next CBA, and the CBA conversation is probably going to have to happen fully next episode. But the maximum term is going to be reduced from 8 years to 7 years. If you're signing with your own team, sign him as soon as possible.
Give him those 8 years and just give him the Seider AAV. Like, again, look at what these defense were signing for. What Provorov, Ferivari, Hag, Ceci. Look at what these guys signed for. If I'm Simon Edvinsson looking around at this going, I'm like, I'm not taking a penny less than 9. Are you high? And obviously the Wings have their internal cap but like, I understand he's only had 1 full season. Every day Edvinsson's contract doesn't get signed, it's only getting more expensive.
Evan, your thoughts on how this all played out, how Yzerman did in free agency, and what's left for them to do?
I agree with pretty much everything you guys have said so far. Like, some of the best GMs are known for the moves they don't make. And I think Yzerman has learned a few lessons and avoided some of those mines that the other GMs just love to step on. But let's be honest, like, the conversation we're having right now is for the diehard fans. Where teams really live and die is those fair weather fans, the people who want to know what superstars are coming, and they're the ones who really start to tune in, and that's when teams really start to sell out buildings. So the fact that we're having the messaging that the Red Wings are incrementally better than a non-playoff team is not great. Like, I know we talk long-term, it's all about maximizing the window, but a lot of people don't care about that. They want to see a winner now. And right now, the Red Wings are one of the worst sports teams in Detroit. Maybe the worst.
Well,
I think it's definitely the worst.
They're bringing the WNBA back, and so that might actually push them even further down the
They're
line.
going to get Caitlin Clark and be the best team in the WNBA.
Every game I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah,
She's
we're
box office.
changing to a WNBA podcast at that point.
We're changing to a Caitlin Clark podcast.
Yes.
I used to be, and Sophie Cunningham, but after what she said about Detroit, sorry, Sophie, but
You're done.
Yeah, you're done.
But I think, I agree with what you guys have said. They avoided all the CCs, all the terrible contracts. Amazing. But they didn't get a top line winger. They didn't get a top 4 defenseman. And the fact that you're trying to sell season tickets to people and you don't have any big hype to attach to it, that's going to be tough for fair weather fans to swallow, which I would assume are the majority of the people who go to games, buy jerseys, tune in.
One thing I'll add, though, is I'm kind of standing on both sides of this, because I do think, like you mentioned McKenna, Brad. I fully disagree. This team is too good to tank for McKenna, plain and simple. You have Seider, you have Raymond.
You think they're too good?
Yeah, to tank for McKenna? Yes.
No, I agree with Ryan on this.
They're not a lottery. They're not a bottom of the lottery
Other than
team.
Buffalo, who are they better than? Boston?
But that's the Atlantic. It's incredibly strong. If you go through...
And those are the teams you have to play most.
But here's the thing. The Red Wings, on paper, in 25-26 are better than the Red Wings on paper in 24-25, and those Red Wings were slotted to pick 12th.
The division is way better coming into this season.
I think
the Leafs are worse. Boston's definitely worse.
Well, yeah.
Buffalo's Buffalo. Yeah, Montreal and Ottawa are...
Forget the division, though. It's the whole league. Pittsburgh might actually finish with negative points if it's up to Kyle Dubas.
Islanders
but not
are worse.
up to Sidney Crosby.
Philly hasn't done anything. Columbus hasn't done much. Right now, as it stands, the Red Wings are probably picking between 12 and 17. But the reason I made that point is they are one top 6 forward or top 4 defenseman injury away from being a McKenna team.
And I totally agree. But that will be out of your control, and then you pivot in season. But as of right now, I'm thinking you can't bank on the tank as a strategy.
I'm not saying that they should tank. I'm saying that you're trying to tell me that this team is better incrementally, and I'm saying the general fan doesn't care.
No, and I agree with you, though. Yeah. And I think that's why Yzerman, I would like to see a little bit more done. I think you can overpay. Prashanth talked about this on a recent podcast. Overpay short term, 1 year deal if you can. You have the cap space. This is going to expire July 1 of 2026. Overpay to just get an option for top 4 defensemen on the left side. Or maybe you get a Grzelcyk deal 3 by 3.5 or whatever.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just going to say Grzelcyk, Orlov, or Brent Burns. None of those inspire confidence.
Okay, I'm actually down to try.
I'm willing to try. I don't think with the way...
I don't know that on Burns. I asked about Burns because I watched Burns and he looked horrible.
He was terrible.
Do you like defensemen who shoot from everywhere in every zone?
A little bit, actually, kind of.
But the thing is, you try short term. Grzelcyk, I don't mind on a even if you want to go 3 years on a cheap deal. Top 6 forward, you're gonna have to get creative. You're gonna have to make a trade. But I think okay, how much did you add with Gibson? If Gibson's healthy, you added quite a bit. If you're not as completely devoid of depth scoring as you were last season, there's an improvement. Just help your defense out with a move that's attainable out there. Offload whoever you need to offload, and then just one move. One move. It doesn't even have to be a high-end.
I'm waiting.
Okay, no, here. Ryan, I'm fully with you on this mindset-wise, but I think the practicality of it's a problem. So, current free agent forwards based on points per game played last year. Here's the top of the list that is left. Victor Olofsson, Jack Roslovic, Jeff Skinner.
It's not going to be...
And then next, just for fun of it, Robbie Fabry.
It's not going to be from free agency. Top 6 forward, everyone wants a top 6 forward. That's not going to be from free agency.
There's none left. There's full stop. There's none left.
There's 2 options here. You make a trade, or one of Danielson or MBN or Mazur comes up and either slots in those spots in the same way or close to what Kasper did, or pushes other people up and allows you to get creative with how you slot in your roster. And it's not a perfect solution, but to some degree, it's a solution. But I don't think this team has to be, stuck at 85 points. I think this team can still give an honest fight for that wildcard spot, because I do think they're better. And the first step was dodging the mistakes, which they did. And the second step is GMing your way out of this, because you can still save your long-term vision
We've been having this conversation for 5 years.
10 years, Evan. What do you mean 5?
Yeah, sorry, but I'm talking over multiple regimes. Like, I agree with what you got. From my perspective, I agree with what you're saying. But when I focus on the general fan, it's gonna be hotter than all hell this year, even hotter than last year for Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings.
But if they improve, and I know it's such a boring, garbage answer, and they're in the playoff race till the last day, the Red Wings didn't make the playoffs 2 years ago. Every fan in Detroit, every sports fan in Detroit was locked on those last 3-4 weeks of the season. Like, having a ton of fun, all in. It was great. Detroit's a city with smart sports fans. They know the score. They know the deal. And yeah, the fair weather fans might be mad there's no big splashy signings, but if the Red Wings get results...
There's probably diehard fans feeling that way,
and let's be honest, we keep ignoring it. John Gibson is kind of a flashy acquisition. Like, that's a name you can put on a billboard at the beginning of the year and look, brand new, number 1 starting goalie, look at this stud. And fair weather fans might go, oh yeah, I've heard of him. He was really good. That's awesome.
He was annoying as hell for us to play against.
Bro, if you're a fair weather
times.
fan, you know who John Gibson is. You're not a fair weather fan.
Well, no. You don't have...
You're a Kitchener Ranger fan, probably.
Yeah. But no, he was an all-star. He was a legit top-of-the-league goalie for a long time until injuries caught up with him. And if those injuries never caught up with him, he might still have been. You're not getting him for a second-round pick at this point, right? And, you know, to your point that you brought up there about, okay, well, you need a Danielson. They only have 12 forwards right now. There are 2 forward spots open, assuming you just keep Hall as a 7th defenseman, for a Mazur, Danielson, MBN to make the team. And if they're playing well, the Red Wings should have no problem kicking a Berggren, a Rasmussen, a Huth out of the lineup for those guys to go in. Like, the opportunity is there. Now, if all of a sudden we're sitting here going, oh, they signed 3 more bottom 6 forwards, okay, now I'm going to have a different tune and I'm going to be a little upset about it. But as it stands right now, they're in a great spot for the young guys. Because if the young guys come into camp and crap the bed, they're fine. They got 12 NHL forwards. If someone comes in, a la Lucas Raymond, and just kicks that door down, there's a spot for him. Like, there's nobody in that bottom 6 you're married to, assuming Soderblom's playing in the first line. And again, the defense, yeah, I don't disagree with you there. There's nobody on the doorstep at taking that spot in Detroit. So
I have more hope for the offense being better with minimal improvements next season. You can get Dominik Hasek, but if you trot out the same defense in front of him, John Gibson's going to have a bad time. Dominik Hasek's going to have a bad time. Alex Lyon and Cam Talbot at different points last season had a bad time. You're going to have a bad time behind this defense. Yes, Edvinsson's going to be better. Yes, maybe you count on another little step from Johansson. You need to push Chiarot down the order. Ideally, you want Johansson on your third pair, and that's what I'm worried about sinking the Red Wings. Which is why I'm like overpay for a guy who's kind of meh, because at least it's more serviceable.
Yeah, but now we're in the scenario after a couple days of free agency pass that we talked about in our preview. The Red Wings might be in a position where they're better off letting all the dollars fly out the door and letting the good teams cap themselves out, seeing what's left, and going value shopping. I don't think Riesmdyk or Orlov are all that good, but they're a hell of a lot better than a couple of the other options the Red Wings have. So if you go out and sign Orlov to a 1 year by $4 million, it's not worth that. But it's only for 1 year, and he's going to be better than whoever else you're going to be trotting out on that left side on that third pair. That's an upgrade. Like, again, they never got to the table with any of the big defensemen. Time to go bargain hunting. And I'm not saying there's a lot out there, but there's still upgrades available. And even if they let a couple more of them come off the board, the further they go, the cheaper everybody gets.
It's a funny year because I think the thesis of what you're saying is right, but there's also still 14 teams, according to Puckpedia right now, who have 10 million cap space or more. The cap going up is, like, capped out isn't really that much of a thing. I'm looking at who's in the red. There's 5 teams.
Yeah, but not every team has the same needs, right? Some of those 10 mil teams might be all in on a forward or all in on a goalie or whatever it is.
Totally. The thing is, like, we're all yelling at each other. Like, me and Evan were arguing just now. We all think the same thing. It's great that they didn't sign Cody Ceci to a 4 by 4.5. It's great that you're not looking at any of these contracts and you're thinking, oh God, here's a Copper, Comfer, Chiarot repeat. The Gibson thing is a really great get, and especially with how the goalie market went, Detroit made out like bandits to extract Gibson from that. And they have their core locked up to phenomenal deals that are getting better every single year. But none of that, all that did was stop the bottom from falling out beneath them. None of that elevates them to what Evan's talking about, which is getting the excitement back behind this team. Long-term winning hasn't been sacrificed. Medium-term winning hasn't been sacrificed. But you can still win more now with some moves that don't come at the cost of those things. So I think we're all, it's nuanced, it's complicated, it's in the middle. It's the offseason has just begun, and I think Yzerman is still working the phones, trying to make something happen. Trades are hard in the NHL, but this is going to sound so stupid to say. Yzerman's been one of the most active GMs in terms of trying to make something happen for a long time. It's not just Keandre Miller. It's not just Gibson. It's a lot of players, but trades just don't happen often or quickly in the NHL. That's what it is.
I think the statement we would all agree with is we would have liked the Red Wings to have made a bigger splash this offseason, but we seen none of those opportunities were available to the Red Wings, and we're happy this is the route they took in the circumstance they were presented.
Like, Gavrikov probably left, what, $1-2 million per year on the table by going to the Rangers for 7.
Yep.
The big dogs seem predetermined.
Yeah, Ekblad left maybe $3 million per year.
Tavares left probably 6.
Yeah. What are you supposed to, if Ekblad's going to stay in Florida for $6.1 million, look, what are you supposed to do about that?
How about you win back-to-back Stanley Cups?
Oh, let's just do that.
We didn't have Ekblad.
Chicken and
the
an
chicken
egg.
or the Ekblad. That's what everyone always says. And I'm not even like, I was 3rd of 3 on this show in terms of wanting Ekblad at a big number, but in the end, I was like, you if he's there, then you go for it, right? Right now, Ehlers, you think the lights are too bright? Tell him they're not. Lie. Or give him a stupid amount of money.
The city shuts off the power at 11 p.m. every evening. He'll be okay.
No one even watches, Nikolai. Don't worry about it. Pick a Danish friend. We'll bring him over and sign him. Great. Sorry.
Norway's close enough to Denmark, right? MBN can,
whatever. But until those opportunities arise or Steve Yzerman manufactures them, and I can't say this emphatically enough, this is not to absolve Yzerman of the responsibility of creating those opportunities, because the best GMs are the ones who do so. But until those opportunities arise, the Red Wings are kind of just where they could be.
I'm just not. I guess the really bottom line is I'm just not excited. If we did the season preview today, I'd say I think they're 7th or 6th in this division, and that's a tough thing to swallow when we have to play 82 games.
Yeah,
84.
No, that's a good way. I was just saying.
I'm not watching 2 out of principle.
I agree with that statement. That's a good way of putting it. I'm not excited about this upcoming season, at least not any more than I was last year.
As of July 2nd.
Yes,
as of July 2nd.
Right now. Let's say a Danielson, or
I'll say a little more.
Obviously something big happens. It's all right, here we go. This is exciting. But at this point, right now, today, July 2nd, I'm in the support group just like everybody else.
Yeah, I will say, I think we continue to ignore the John Gibson thing. I'm not saying he's going to come in and be the wild card.
Listen, you wanted John Gibson for the past 5 years. We got him. Please stop.
No, but John Gibson healthy could be the difference between them missing and making the playoffs.
100%. I think a healthy John Gibson on his game is worth more than a couple standings points.
He's going to have to play Vezina caliber goaltending.
But that's what can play. Yeah,
so
he's been.
No,
he absolutely cannot.
For 10 games last year.
Cannot.
10 games, yeah. John Gibson's done it for full seasons.
This is a man who's been hurt so much.
Here's the thing. I'm betting he's not going to be healthy the whole year. I'm going to bet it's not going to happen. But I'm saying, if it does, there's at least a reason for optimism there.
I'm not saying he's a silver bullet and guaranteeing to get them in, but he already could be enough based on...
I would love to be proven wrong.
They need more. I agree with you. They need more. But
okay, let's just, as it stands, July 2nd.
Do we know what we're even arguing about?
I don't know. I'm so lost.
Level of excitement going into the season.
0.
The goaltending
I just don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, it's my rating.
Okay, so here's what I'll say as objectively as we can. in an area where nothing's objective. The goaltending is better.
100%.
The defense is better.
Marginally.
Marginally,
Still better.
but still better. The offense is better.
On paper, yes.
2 of those 3 positions, I will say marginally, but they are better at all 3 positions, and I would argue significantly at one of them. Again, I don't think that makes them a 93, 94 point team, which means playoffs are unlikely, but with a little bit of luck and a little bit of health, they're going to be right there. But then again, the argument goes the other way. You're one Dylan Larkin injury or one Simon Edvinsson injury from, hey, do you think Gavin McKenna will wear number 72 in Detroit to honor Athanasiou? Or like,
well, when you're a 6th, 7th place team in your division, that's just sort of the reality of your composition, right?
But then this also leads into the snowball effect we're talking about. If everything does go right for the Red Wings, then they make the playoffs. Then we have to get very critical of Steve Yzerman because that's the summer he has to go. The team has momentum. Some of these big free agents might actually sit down at the table and talk to the playoff team. Look at Noah Dobson. Montreal made the playoffs once, and he was willing to sign there for 8 years. Like, winning begets more winning.
Yeah.
And as whenever, it might not be, it probably won't be this year, where the Red Wings get that snowball going. But the second they do, they have to go.
And again, we've mentioned it a couple times here, another accelerant other than like signing on defense or a trade at forward, which is what we're saying they would have to do to get some winning this year. Internal improvement in terms of the guys they have who are going to make it. ASP is a long shot. MBN's a little bit less, but I'd still say a long shot. I think Danielson, maybe even Mazur, both have decent enough chances to make this roster. And if they don't right away, at some point in the season, we're going to see at least some of those guys, even if it's for a little bit. We're big believers in what Nate Danielson can do in this lineup. Do we think he's the first line center of the future to take over from Dylan Larkin? Probably not. But look at what Marco Kasper did to this team. If Marco Kasper didn't come in last year and do what he did for the Red Wings, we are not talking about this team with any hope. Evan's take just now would seem downright optimistic based on what we'd be saying, but Kasper did come in and do it, and the Red Wings have more players of that ilk in terms of the play style, but also where they are in terms of their development and the impact they can make. Do they have a Gavin McKenna in the pipeline? No, but they have a lot of really good talent coming. You can want the short-term success and grab if you think Orlov or Grzelcyk, even though they're not much better than league average, but just bringing this team to league average, you can want that and still look forward to the long-term improvement that could come from those guys. So it's another offseason where we're saying there's a lot of ifs. Let's see between July and October what Steve Yzerman can do to change the dynamic here and maybe get a different rating from Evan. And that's why, you don't throw in the towel on anything. You're not dead in the water, though. I have no qualms with someone who's frustrated with this team right now. Absolutely not at all. And I think they're right to be frustrated because it's not been fun to watch and that you didn't go in and land any of these big names. And I have absolutely no qualms with anyone who's sitting here and saying, you couldn't. Marchand, he signed in Florida until he was 43 years old. Like, that's a fate. It's not real. It's cap circumvention. That's a whole different thing. That's
Remember
not a real
contract.
contract.
Kovalchuk and the Luongo contracts that got punished by the league?
Yeah.
I'm actually genuinely upset that this one isn't. Like, now,
I mean, Tanev in Toronto first, and that's why
but
Boston.
Tanev, I think, only went to 40. Marchand's going to 43? Like, oh my God.
But again, it's the mushy middle in more than one way where you can want and be frustrated that there's not more winning now, and you can acknowledge that this is just kind of the unfortunate position based on the market this year. You know that's you're in that middle spot when there's going to be comments and notes and messages from both sides of that argument ripping us apart for this one.
There's going to be people yelling at each other that Steve Yzerman did a good job avoiding all the bad contracts, and then there's going to be the other people who yell at that person because the Red Wings didn't land a top-level free agent, and I think both can be somewhat right.
Isn't that what we just kind of did?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
This is just a really good microcosm of all of that. Okay, long episode. We're going to take another quick break here, and when we're back, We are going to get into the rest of the league, overtime, and more. Back after this. Welcome back. Before overtime, we touched a lot on other signings across the league, but we'll get into more of the signings across the league. I think the sign and trade where Mitch Marner signs one more contract with the Leafs to be traded to Vegas, 8-year, $12 million contract. It's the rent and a dealer or whatever you want to call it. That standard has been set. No state income tax, and so the $12 million is worth more than if he signed it in Detroit or Toronto or anywhere else. And Toronto gets Nick Roy in exchange. There's a lot of noise about Toronto not being happy about any alleged tampering. Based on what's out there, I don't think, based on what's been allowed in the NHL in the past, it would have amounted to anything. But Vegas essentially just gave him okay, here, go away. We get the 8th year. Everyone wins here. Toronto, you're not getting Marner anyways, and Marner is a golden knight now.
He's a knight once again, although tough for Vegas still, because it looks like the way they're getting the cap space for Mitch Marner is because Alex Pietrangelo's career is probably over.
Yeah, that's
which sucks.
Huge loss.
And that's for a team that relied on their defense to be the strength of their team. That sucks.
Well, they're bringing in a Selke caliber forward, so that'll help.
Yeah, definitely equal contributions in the playoffs too.
If Vegas goes on a playoff run the first year with Mitch Marner, Leafs Twitter is going to be my favorite place on earth.
Oh, it's happening.
It's written in stone.
It's 100% happening.
They don't even need to go to the Cup final or win the Cup. If they get to the conference finals with Mitch Marner,
and
they can't go to the Cup finals because Corey Perry signed up with LA.
Great call. Yeah,
that's right.
Very true.
Yeah. Evan Bouchard extends in Edmonton 4 years, $10.5 million.
My initial reaction is that's like a Kyle Dubas given contract where he's just walking himself to free agency and he's getting his cake and eating it too.
Like, is he worth more than 10.5 based on how the cap's going up? Yeah, probably. But you're going to have to pay McDavid $1 trillion. He'll give you a little haircut, but it's still going to be a lot. You're giving Draisaitl 14. You have Darnell Nurse for so much money, 9 point whatever, with a no move contract. I don't see Edmonton's way out of this. I really don't. And they're going to be hurt again on Bouchard. And if you even look at the structure of Bouchard's contracts, like being in a cap bind previous is why they're in this situation. I don't know what Edmonton's going to do. And they still don't have their goalie situation solved.
Well, don't worry. They got the best GM for the job.
They went from Ken Holland to Stan Bowman.
Somehow didn't upgrade in that scenario. Truly an almost impossible feat.
I don't understand.
And they were left there standing outside of the goalie carousel.
I'm not saying Evan Bouchard's not worth $10.5 million.
They had to sign him.
But it's
They
like,
had to, yeah.
and maybe he's saying, like, I only want 4 because I don't trust that you can keep Connor McDavid longer than that, right? Like,
not a bad theory.
And if the cap keeps going up and up and up, like, I don't know if superstars will want to start signing 4-year, 5-year type deals and just waiting things out, but if Evan Bouchard continues to have a strong performance season in and season out or through this whole contract, like he's going to get paid a boatload of money again.
We talked about the defense market being bizarre. Like, yeah, $7 million for Gavrikov, and we're like, that's a discount based on what he could have got. 7.5 for Keandre Miller, who we all wanted, but is more of a risk than Gavrikov. And then you have Provorov coming in, and who we thought might have been like a secondary option if he made it to market. Stays with Columbus, 7 years, $8.5 million a year for Provorov.
I normally don't love looking at a lot of these player cards that all the analytics people put out. When I saw that, I went sprinting to so many of them. I had to know. And the first one I saw said, yeah, his market value is $3.5 million. I went, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's one of those contracts where you're like, am I just wrong about how I feel about this player?
Yeah.
I don't hate Ivan Provorov. Like, I think would have been an interesting option for Detroit. But when I saw $8+ million, I was like, am I an idiot? Like, is he a Norris caliber defenseman? Am I like just way off and saying he could play on Detroit's second pair?
Like that's an agent who successfully, I mean, he would have been first pair in Detroit, but that's an agent who successfully did the well, percentage of cap, and if the cap's going up, so you have to tie the number to this plus an increase. Like, it feels like he gave up nothing in that negotiation.
There was a lot of times over the last few days where I saw a contract break, and one of the first things I did would click on whatever insider's profile posted it to make sure it wasn't a fake account.
Yeah.
I did that with 2 separate insider accounts when the Provorov one broke because I refused to believe they gave Ivan Provorov $8.5 million.
Shocking contract that wasn't about an overpay, but where the guy landed. After all that, the relationship looked tarnished, ruined, destroyed. Brock Besser stays in Vancouver, 7 by 7.25.
If Amazon or Netflix or whoever is not filming in Vancouver, the whole NHL has been a waste of our time.
I mean this literally. You could have given me 31 guesses where Brock Besser was going to sign. I would have been wrong. I would not have gotten it.
Oh.
All that drama, months and months and months of drama, and him. I don't understand anything.
Speak of actually another defensive contract where I was like, oh, yeah, maybe not an option for Detroit. Nick Hague, who we were like, maybe you can peel it off Vegas for cheap because they're not going to be able to afford him. What would he really cost you? Yeah, 4 years, 5.5. And that might work out for them. But again, this is a guy who hasn't played the kind of minutes you'd have to hope he grows into a bigger role on a worse team, which would have been the case in Detroit. But 4 times 5.5 in Nashville for Nick Hague.
I like Nick Hague. That's nuts. Like, what was we were talking about it, I think on the live stream. There's been like 11 defensemen who have played 900 plus minutes for Vegas in the last however many years. Only one of them has a negative goal differential, and it's Nick Hague. Like, that's the one you're going to make that kind of bet on. And like, is Nashville going for it, or are they rebuilding? Like, what are they doing? That is the most directionless team in the NHL.
Talk about teams that you might be able to peel guys off of if they sputter out this.
Who do you want off that team?
Ask me in February.
Roman Josi.
He's lefty.
That would work.
That would work. And his contract looks like a downright steal now.
Amazing contract. Stankoven stays on very nice terms in Carolina.
Oh, that was probably the best contract signed this week.
8 years, $6 million per year. Phenomenal deal. 22-year-old center who's only going to get better. And then you have Boston doing God knows what. They bring in Tanner Jeannot on a 5-year, $3.4 million contract.
What? Did they just look at what he got traded for 4 years ago and went, he must be sick?
Maybe.
Like, he's been awful since.
He's sick, but just not good at hockey.
It's like,
he's got one of those summer colds. It's the worst. Ruins your golf game. Your swing never comes back.
Torn motivator.
Ryan Lindgren, 4x4.5. Cody Ceci, 4x4.5. I had so much worry coming into July 1 that either one of those contracts would have been in Detroit.
That's why I kept making the Ryan Lindgren meme jokes, because I was like, reverse jinx it. I'll count the success.
There's a ton that happened in free agency, but again, it was a very weird one. It wasn't, you saw more mega contracts handed out in years where the cap was flat. And this year, there was a ton of teams who were kind of biding their time.
No, so what happened, at least this is my theory, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Normally in free agency, there's a much richer pool because key players just get priced out of the good teams they're on. They run out of cap space. Guys are due raises, yada, yada, yada. And they just physically can't fit them under the cap. With everybody getting this big cap increase, everybody could afford to just keep their own guys. So I think so few guys hit the mark. Well, we saw it. Free agency happened before July 1.
And I think we're also seeing this year an unheard of number of guys taking discounts.
That's just the Florida guys, too.
Yeah, like
the fact
3 guys all took less than what they could have gotten on the open market to stay with the team. I mean, they just won back-to-back cups, but it seemed impossible for the longest time, and Florida just did it without even thinking about it.
Can I make one more point before we go into overtime? Montreal's cooking, man.
This is why I'm way more pessimistic on the short-term outcome for the Red Wings, because Montreal is doing something.
I don't think Ottawa did much, which helps Detroit. I don't know if Detroit did enough to pass them. Probably not.
They had a press conference about Lars Eller. I thought that was like
Well, just the Dobson thing alone for Montreal was huge.
Mayu for Bolduc was I thought that was a nice move. I don't get that from St. Louis.
Who's their decor? They've got Lane Hudson, Noah Dobson, Caden Gooley,
Jack Guy,
David Reinbacher.
Yeah, I forget he's coming up too.
And they're injecting Demidov and Bolduc into their lineup. Like, that team's going to be scary.
Isn't there?
Yeah.
Alexander Carrier,
Carrier. I forgot they got him last year.
Great pickup too.
Their goaltending's iffy now, but in a small sample size, Montebelle's been good, and they got Jacob Fowler coming as the potential guy of the future. Man, other than their forwards being on the small side, I don't like that Montreal's in our division right now.
Until they do it.
They made the playoffs.
I know, but until I see that happen, they're good all year, I'm not going to put them as a bolt-on, they're going to be a wild card spot team. But I don't see them regressing, I'll tell you that much.
Today, July 2nd, you making your predictions. Are they in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. I agree.
Pretty rude of you to ask me that question, but
I think if in a perfect world, I actually think they've passed Ottawa at this point. I think if Detroit gets lucky, that last spot comes down to Detroit and Ottawa. Okay. Maybe Toronto really misses Mitch Marner because they did replace him with Michael Pezzetta. So Marner had 102 points last year.
Where did they get the other 80?
Oh, no. The gap they have to make up is 102 points. Pezzetta had 0 points last year.
Oh, good. Oh, they bought it. They signed or traded for Matias Michelli, right?
Yes, they did.
I like that move a lot.
Yeah, that's a good reclamation project.
Before going into overtime, I know people are often kidding when they say this, but they're like, oh, you had to replace 100 points, but we got this 60-point guy and this 40-point guy. Yeah, okay. Here's the thing. If you're ever serious about that, it is way more advantageous to get 100 points from one player's minutes than two players' minutes.
Don't they say don't trade $1 for 4 quarters?
Yes. Whoever's getting the best player in a deal or a transaction often wins the trade, and there's just a mathematical reason why. If you have to take up 2 roster spots to get the production of one person, that is not difficult arithmetic. But I saw a whole lot of that justification going online the past few days. Okay, another quick tiny break here, and then when we're back, the final segment here on the Wing Wheel Podcast, back after this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Again, if you want to support the show, the bonus episodes, the Discord, the giveaways, all of that and lots more. And before we take questions from our patrons here, we actually want to do a quick note. Congratulations to Bob McKenzie on his second, this time full retirement. We should have, given more attention to that. Just free agency is a crazy, crazy time, as you can tell by this mess of an episode. But Bob McKenzie, if you can pick a GOAT of being a hockey insider or the coverage he gives to the NHL draft, free agency, trade deadline, World Juniors, it is going to be insane to imagine any of those without Bob, but that's a guy who's already retired once and still came back for those things, and we are all the better for it. So he'll be missed on the broadcast, but is a well-deserved retirement. Hope to catch him out on the golf course someday, but yeah, just
the Bob Father.
The Bob Father, Bobby Margarita, an all-time great.
He was the OG insider, right? He was the guy you listened to for the inside tidbits you couldn't get anywhere else, and just everything he did at the NHL level and the junior hockey level as well. The guy was he's like Ken Holland, addicted to the game, just loved it, and he's earned his retirement, that's for sure.
We still use his draft list.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be lost without it next year. Anyhow, congratulations, Bob McKenzie. Some questions from our patrons. Join the Dark Sider says, long time no comment. Gents, what's an immediate free agent signing you saw and said, darn, we could have realistically done that? And another that made you happy we avoided like the plague. All right, we did the avoid one, which, CC there's a lot of actual bad ones, but what's one that you would have done?
The Tavares one. We're only if you leave at midnight, we're only 3 hours Toronto to Detroit.
That Detroit actually had a chance at, though, would be the one. You're not going to like my answer.
It's going to be Nyquist or Mantha?
It's Mantha. $2 million for that. Everybody can laugh. He's a better option to play with Larkin or Raymond than anybody the Red Wings have right now. Sorry, he is. He his effort's inconsistent, but when he was on, he was legit top 6 all day, every day.
He'd have cardio games, but at least he could score a hat trick here and there.
Yeah,
Actually, we'd be happy when he had a cardio game. It meant he was skating.
True.
No, but that's the thing. When he actually skated, he was fast. Like that's the thing. We were at the game. He scored 4 goals, including the game winner with like a minute left. Like the problem with Mantha was consistency. But the good thing with Mantha, when he was on, he was on.
Will Bukima says Appleton signing feels like Yzerman/McClellan type and a boost on PK, but having deja vu over all the talk of duplicative roster players. First thing that jumped to mind is if this signing points to Rasmussen being traded out, what are your thoughts? We actually didn't talk enough about that. The Red Wings are very well positioned, especially if they want to make other moves where someone might be on their way out. And there's a lot of options.
The center market sucked. There might actually be value to be had for Comfort Cup.
There might, like, if you retain, and I'm not saying they should do this because we already talked about a lacking top 6. If you retain on Cop, that is actually, in this market, a lot of value.
A lot of value.
If you
Now, the Red Wings are worse off for it. He's their best bet to play third line center right now. And in the same breath, he might be the best bet to play first line left wing right now. But
if you move Comfer out, though, and save yourself the rest of that contract.
And again, I think the Rasmussen contract's sneaky bad that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think he's young enough and good enough that he still has value. And I'm worried that if he has plateaued and he is officially at the stage of he is what he is, he gets less valuable every game that passes.
Yeah, but big. And so you can always convince a GM. Always you can convince a GM.
So do it while he's at the height of the value. It could be very valuable right now.
Cheesy Spoon 72 says, what are your guys' predictions or hopes for the Centennial uniforms, and will they do a home and road or just a home? I think you'll just see one. And I mean, you look at the motif they went for. It's the Big House Winter Classic with the red and the cream and that winged wheel. I always think is the best jersey of all time. Maybe something similar to that.
That feels like it's going to be pretty close to what they're getting at.
I would love it if they did more than one jersey, and I don't think it's out of the question, but I think for sure you'll have just like one mainstay.
What if they did that jersey but inverted the colors?
Incredible. Give me 14 of them. Mickey Redmond's favorite flannel says, maybe I'm tempting fate. Maybe it'll have changed by the time you record this, but is it worth reading into the fact that Steve hasn't done media availability yet? Usually they do it once they're done. He could still be working on things. Steve Yzerman is the first person who will tell you this roster still has holes he wants to fill. He is still working on things. Like Keandre Miller came and went, and it wasn't to the Red Wings. It's not like he saw that and went, all right, well, that's it. He's still going to try to work on stuff. The nice thing is he has all summer. The bad thing maybe for Red Wings fans who are a little angsty is he has all summer. Dan Vocal says, assuming no other trades or acquisitions happen this offseason, I'm going to believe more is to come given we have roughly $15 million in cap. How much money will the Wings have in cap space going into the 26-27 season where it appears to be a much more healthy crop of free agents? A lot because of the increase and other contracts coming off the books. Now, Edvinsson will be due in its extension, and so that will change things a bit, but the Red Wings will be in a very healthy position.
Yeah. Well, one, and feels like we're going to have to repeat this a lot. 75% of the names on that free agent list for next summer right now will not be free agents by the time you get there. It bears out that way every year, and this year was the extreme end of that.
McDavid, Panarin, Kaprizov, gone, for sure.
They will get re-signed, and if things go off the rails for New York, traded, and then signed with their new team. They will almost all not make it to market. But yeah, a lot of... Actually, I wonder, because you got to figure Edvinsson will get 8-9 mil, but then Hall comes off the books. So technically on defense there, you're adding 5 mil to your cap hit, but Tarasenko's already gone, and I'm struggling to remember all the other contracts that'll be coming off the book at the end of this year. But yeah, it'll be an increase, but not like dramatic.
They won't be struggling for sure. They'll have, even if nothing else changes, they'll have options to make moves there. Yep. Like Chiarot comes off, Hall comes off.
Chiarot, I forgot about him.
Yeah. Talbot, and you'll see what you want to do there. Giant Bag O'Coffee says, with not much being done this free agent signing period, again, good or bad, up to you, who are the trade targets? Steve told us that the trade market is where he expects to get better, and this team needs to upgrade somehow. Draft picks are nice, but they always multiple years away, and after 10 years rebuilding, I'd love to see a splash to get us over the hump. That Centennial logo needs to be seen in April. I mean, we've talked about the big names like Robertson and, whoever else. Now Miller's gone to Carolina. I've really come around on Brian Rust in terms of what he could bring, especially with the cap going
That's
up.
the big name you're thinking of?
Brian Rust would help this top 6 right now.
Scored 31 goals last year or something like that.
He's cost controlled for
Okay.
multiple years. He's not
Bring it on, baby.
All right, Evan.
They bring him in, I'll get his jersey. I don't care. Whatever.
Steve.
I'll get the Centennial version. It'll be a great trivia question in 20 years.
In 50 years, he'll sell
Well, the Red Wings are still incrementally improving.
What are we giving up for Brian Rust and Erik Karlsson half retained?
I'm all over that. And I think Erik Karlsson's not even a defenseman. If you hated Shane Gostisbehere's defense, boy, let me tell you, you're going to see some special stuff from Erik Karlsson in both directions.
Yeah, but I'll take the 70 points.
Great mustache, too.
Yes. Hey, we've talked about the Red Wings need some personality in the room. Erik Karlsson's got that covered. That man is a wonderful human being.
Again, it's not the sexy, the Robertson trade or another premier player, whoever you can peel off someone, but that's one that I think, like, those are a couple guys. Pittsburgh.
Why is, even Evan Rodriguez maybe being a captain, why is it every forward that's available is a righty when the Red Wings need a lefty? What is this world?
I know. Detroit Hockey Fan 14 also asks about trading, and it's a theme. Everyone's looking to trade, and that's what Yzerman is going to be looking at. Daniel Kapla, realistic trade targets is what they're asking about. I think you look at more of the Brian Rust, the Rodriguez's. That's way more likely, though, than Robertson. If you want to say what's likely.
100%.
Ricard,
would you have
righty?
given up, Evan, would you have given up a first, a second, and a Scott Morrow equivalent
No.
plus $7.5 million for Keandre Miller?
No.
Great, then you have to go for the more realistic guys.
Okay.
The market's been set. All right, last one here. Dan DeVries says, how much cap does Buffalo have at this point? If someone offers sheets Byram at $11 million for a year,
Oh my God, I forgot about Byram for trade targets.
Yeah, that's the last one there. That Byram is I'm kind of I don't even care what you think about the player and the certainty. At this point, Buffalo's in such disarray. You're talking about saving $100,000 on Bernard Docker. That you might be able to actually peel him away if his contract demands are too high, and that's a worthwhile bet in my mind. Because if you trade for Byram, whatever you're giving up, is that going to push Buffalo past you? No, that team is going to get worse, probably.
Well, he doesn't want to stay, so Buffalo has to manage their asset appropriately, because
that's a pretty rich statement, what you just said, that last sentence.
That might be the most difficult part of the whole thing, because he can just take a 1-year ARB contract, right? So they can't allow that to happen either. They need to get something back.
If they want to get better, they're going to want players, and the Red Wings have players. And I mean, there's
Rasmussen, Comfort, Kopp.
Yeah, if you
all three for Byram, let's do it. It's weird.
If Bernard Docker pops off, can we trade him back?
No, we need him. Okay, we've gone so long and so off the rails. That's our free agency preview. I hope there's an emergency trade episode coming soon, but the free agency and draft and all that being done doesn't mean our coverage stops. We're going to be going into what this roster needs to do, projections, analysis, a look at who's coming in the pipeline, development camps happening right now. So a lot of content is coming. So stay tuned to the Winged Wheel podcast. We're going to wrap this episode up. Thank you to our sponsors of the show. Thank you to all of our listeners, new and old. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this without you. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to support the show. If you want to help us out, but Patreon's not for you, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, be it Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever. Hit the subscribe button, leave a rating, a review, the stars, the thumbs up, whatever it is. It all helps us out a lot. To our name level supporters on Patreon, we cannot do this without you. Arjun Shankar, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Below Average Ball Hockey Goalie, Rain Dano, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, Alec, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Bear Necessities, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Butts Carlton, Carl Brutina Nanaluski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nanny, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Dirk Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Giant Bag of Coffee, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingles, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Chaotic Monkey, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Mr. Kuzi, now I have to learn how to click on the Macintosh, Podgy713, R.A., Roy Donk, Sam Bankston, Slim Smitty Card, Stephen Artley, That's What I Appreciates About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, William, Wings Fan in Chicago, Iserplan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, A.A. Ron, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Big Cheese, C.E. Hayes, Chris Folinsky, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Brown, Pomeranian, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Jacob Marsh, brand new name level supporter. Welcome, Jacob, to the Dub Dub Club. James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Josh Yelchin, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hall, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raitman, Matt Keeler, Mike Asher, brand new name level supporter. Welcome, Mike, to the Dub Dub Club. Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Peter Swanson, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Steven, Dan Thanks, that other guy, the Hodag, the Hat 123, trading down for a fourth liner and a prayer, Trent Thurrow, our good friend Wings Fan in St. Louis Scott, Wolverine on his bed with a framed photo of Pew Suter, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.